Well, look at that. Pitt's got another 4-star recruit in the class of 2024. We're going to be talking about what Yasin Willis' commitment means for Pitt's recruiting class, for the roster, for the running backs, for the history of everything under Pat Narduzzi, and a whole lot more to get your week started on the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, it's Monday morning. It's the beginning of a new week. It's the beginning of training camp week. And it's the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Everything you need right there. Football, basketball, recruiting. We cover it all at Panther-Lair.com. And we have message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans all day, every day at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Pitt fans are there all the time talking about Pitt sports. If you want to be part of that conversation, you need to check out the message boards at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, and we'll have plenty of coverage there coming up on the message boards and on the site this week as Pitt begins training camp on Wednesday. They'll have their first practice of camp on Wednesday. They'll have media day on Wednesday. We'll talk to Pat Narduzzi on Wednesday. We'll do everything on Wednesday. There's a lot going on. All leading up to our live show on Wednesday night. So we're going to have a lot to talk about in the evening as well. But if you want to stay up on all of that coverage, you want to keep up to date with everything that's going on, that's the place to do it. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com to get all the coverage from Media Day and beyond. So make sure you tune in by then. Might even do a little special promo for you or something to get you ready for training camp, or maybe we'll wait a week. We'll decide. We'll have something for you, though. But even though it's training camp starting this week, even though the season is really, really upon us now, and the month of August is really upon us now, we got a little recruiting news to cover because on Saturday, Pitt finally added another commitment to the class. First time in, how long has it been since the last commitment? Anybody remember the date? Or how long it's been since that last commitment? It has been almost a full month. Moritz Schmorenzer committed June 30th, made it official or announced his commitment. And one day shy of an exact month later, Yasin Willis, 4-star running back from St. Joseph Regional in Montvale, New Jersey, a school that Pitt is familiar with. They've gotten players from there before. I think Kwan Williams came from St. Joseph Regional. I think there have been a few others off the top of my head. I'm not bringing them to mind, but I remember K1. But Yasin Willis is a big one, a big commitment for Pitt, and that's one that we've been talking about for a while. We've been talking about Yasin Willis as being a potential commitment for Pitt for quite some time, and basically since his official visit. He took his official visit the second weekend, I should say, in June 8th through the 10th. We kind of thought he was one of the recruits who committed during that visit, but then there was nothing. It was radio silence from Yasin Willis after that visit, and we never really heard anything. He took an official visit to Rutgers the week before he went to Pitt, took an official visit to Michigan at the end of the month. I forget if that visit actually happened or not. I want to say that it got canceled, but Yasin Willis as a 4-star recruit, a 4-star prospect in the class of 2024, a top 200 recruit in the nation, number 16 running back prospect in the nation, number 1 recruit overall, regardless of position in the state of New Jersey. He had offers from Alabama, Boston College, Cincinnati, Duke, Illinois, Kentucky, Louisville, Maryland, UMass, Ole Miss, Nebraska, Michigan, Penn State, Rutgers, South Carolina, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, West Virginia. Ton of offers out there. An offer sheet befitting a player of his ranking and a player of his caliber and a player of his ability. He's a 6'1", 220-pound running back who has rushed for, I had the number right in front of me, and then I forgot which document I put that on. He has rushed for 2,156 yards and 26 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons combined. He has the 62-yard interception return for a touchdown last year, so he actually scored 18 touchdowns. He had 17 rushing touchdowns plus the pick 6. He went for 1,133 yards, averaged better than 6 yards per carry over the last 2 years. And he's a bigger back, and when you watch his film, you're like, wow, that's a big dude. I mean, a lot of plays he's making, he's breaking tackles. But he's not just breaking tackles. He's breaking tackles and then really doing something with that extra space that he gets. I counted it up. Out of his 17 rushing touchdowns last season, 10 of them were gains of 20 yards or more. He also had 5 rushing touchdowns where he gained 30 yards or more, and he had one for 74 yards, he had one for 52 yards, he had one for 42 yards, and one for 41. So he had his fair share of long touchdown runs. He's not just a big back. Now, I made the mistake one time of calling a big back, saying that he wasn't a home run hitter, and that wasn't part of his game, and that big back took it personally and even sort of called me out, James Conner, prior to his sophomore season. During training camp, we're interviewing him, and he says, I read on Rivals that I'm not a home run hitter or something like that, so I want to show that I am. And I mean, James showed that he could break some long runs. Of course, that game against Georgia Tech with the 6 fumbles to open the game, he broke a long run and just happened to get caught at about the 2 and fumbled the ball out of the back of the end zone. And in the dumbest rule in sports, the possession goes to the defense. But I digress. I'm not going to compare Yasin Willis to James Conner. I'm not going to compare him to anyone. I mean, you can do that if you want to find comparisons of a big back who's got a little bit of breakaway speed. He's not going to be the fastest back on the team when he gets here next season or next summer, or probably not going to enroll in January. I'm guessing he'll probably be a June enrollee. He's not going to be the fastest back on the team, but he'll be the biggest back on the team. TJ Harbison has decent size. Montrevious Lloyd is a little bit smaller. Derek Davis is not a small guy. He's got decent size for a running back. Rodney Hammond, of course, is a little bit shorter. And then Jules Goff, the other running back in this 2024 recruiting class, is not a huge back. He's got decent size, but he's not a big back. Not in the way that Yasin Willis is. And I think Yasin Willis, I mean, if you look for a body comparison, a body type comparison, I don't think they've had a big back like him since maybe Darren Hall and Quadri Olson in 2018. And probably you could go back to James Conner, although James was not 6'1", 220. He was pushing 230, into the 240, up to 240 or so. And so they haven't really had a back like Yasin Willis. I thought Malik Newton, who's a little bit smaller, but had some of that power and speed combo, maybe would be a bit of a comparison. But Yasin Willis, we can say he's one of one. There aren't a lot of backs like him, and he showed a little versatility with some of his work at the prospect camps this offseason, and he's going to Pitt. And I think one thing that I would say that probably should be clarified right off the bat is when you look at his offer sheet and, he had an offer from Alabama, right? And we see recruits sometimes, they might commit to Pitt or they'll commit to a school, and they'll have offers that you say, wow, that kid had an offer from this school and this school and this school. And you get down to the nitty gritty or the details, and you say, well, maybe he didn't really have a committable offer to that school. I think in this case with Yasin Willis, from everything I've heard from a variety of sources, I think Alabama was a realistic option for him. I think he could have committed to Alabama. I don't think this was, we talked a little bit near the end of June after he apparently committed that, we talked a little bit that maybe he was just waiting to find out if Alabama would give him the go-ahead. I think Alabama was willing to take him. I think he legitimately chose Pitt over Alabama. I think Pitt presented him with a better opportunity, an opportunity to play. Despite taking 2 running backs in last year's recruiting class and being the second back taken in this class, I think they presented him with an opportunity to play. Obviously presented him with a history of sending players to the NFL, particularly recently, a history of having players drafted. And obviously, and this might be to the chagrin of some Pitt fans, but there's a commitment to running the ball. And this, I don't mean to say that Alabama doesn't have a commitment to running the ball, but you don't find this level of commitment to running the ball at every school across the country. And I think that was a factor for Yasin Willis. I think that impacted his decision and helped Pitt land him for this 2024 recruiting class. So Willis is recruit number 21 in the class, announced commitment number 21 as of last night. Pitt's recruiting class ranked number 26 in the nation, number 6 in the ACC. As we've said countless times, there's still a quantity element going on. Pitt's, when you talk about the team recruiting ranks, particularly on Rivals, they rank classes according to their top 20 prospects in each team's recruiting class. And it's a cumulative points system. And so if you have 20 commitments right now, or 21 is the case of Pitt, and you're competing against a team with 14 commitments, you have a good chance of being ranked higher, even if, that other team with 14 commitments, half of them or 10 of them could be 4-star prospects. Pitt's class has 4 4-star prospects, but the bigger class overall, Pitt's, is going to be ranked higher, even though you would probably look at it and say, well, yeah, the class with 10 4-stars is a better class. It's because it's a cumulative point system. Eventually, these things will balance out. Will Pitt land in the top 25? Will Pitt stay in the top 30? Will they drift down into the 30s, to 35 or wherever? I don't know, because we have to see how Pitt's class shakes out. Do they get 2 more 4-star prospects like I've been predicting? If they do, then they'll be a top 30 class. If they fail to do so, or recruit rankings change or whatever, then it's going to be a little bit tougher. Some of it will be based on what other schools do as well. But that's where they are right now. It's 21 commitments, 21 announced commitments. We do think there's one more still hanging out there to put them to 22. But 21 announced commitments. Of those 21, 4 are 4-star prospects. Yasin Willis is the most recent one. Before him was Cameron Lindsay, the 4-star linebacker from Aliquippa. Jasir Whittington, the 4-star defensive tackle from Philadelphia. And Dede Farmer, the 4-star wide receiver from Florida, who continues to be a bit of an enigma, but continues to be in Pitt's recruiting class for now. A few thoughts. Let's talk about the recruiting angle for a second. Obviously, with Yasin Willis and Jules Goff both committed, Pitt has all the running backs it needs for the 2024 recruiting class, and I think they've also effectively made up for basically what happened to them in 2020 and 2021. I think when you look at it, well, no, it would be more like 2020 and 2022, I guess, because in 2020 they, actually, 3 years in a row, 2020, 21, 22, they failed to meet their goals in all 3 seasons. I knew I was trying to draw a blank there somewhere. 2020, they signed Izzy Abanikanda. That's great. But they were aiming to take 2 backs in that class and had Henry Parrish committed before he flipped his commitment to Ole Miss and ultimately transferred to Miami. 2021 recruiting class, okay, back to the well, going to sign 2 backs this time. They got Rodney Hammond and Malik Newton. Everything was good to go until Newton enrolled in January and couldn't pass the medical evaluation, was medically disqualified. He ultimately transferred to West Virginia State. I tried to track him down recently just to see where he ended up, and I lost track. So 2 years in a row, they tried to sign 2 running backs, and they failed to do so for a variety of reasons. Fast forward to 2022, last year's freshman recruiting class. They aimed to sign 1 running back in that class, Jordan Bailey from the Tampa area, and he failed to qualify academically and went to, I believe, a Division II school. We talked about this recently. So if you look at the last 3 years, they've tried to sign 2, 2, and 1, and they signed 1, 1, and 0. Now, 2023, this year's recruiting class, this year's current freshman, I should say, they got 2 guys. They got TJ Harvison, who enrolled in January, and Montravius Lloyd, who arrived in June. Now they've got 2 lined up for this class of 2024 with Jules Goff and Yasin Willis. If the coaches felt like they were off track because of 2020, 21, and 22, they've effectively put themselves back on track. And I think when you look at the scholarship board, there were some gaps in there. I mean, there were some holes between Sibo Flemister and Daniel Carter in the senior class for this year, and then Rodney Hammond and Derek Davis. Hammond is a junior. Davis is listed as a junior, but should be a redshirt sophomore. I'm going to see if Pitt has changed that, but that's where he should be. But there were some gaps on the scholarship board before you get back to Harvison and Lloyd. You move forward to next year, you're going to have 4 guys with first or second year eligibility. If Harvison and Lloyd are both able to redshirt this year, in 2024, you'll have 4 freshman running backs. You'll have Harvison and Lloyd as redshirt freshmen and Goff and Willis as true freshmen. That's a pretty good place to be, because if there's any, and I don't think you worry about being too young, because if there's any position where you're comfortable with freshmen playing and you're comfortable with relying on freshmen, and freshmen often do contribute probably at a higher percentage and a higher success rate than any other position, it's running back. So if you go into next season, Sebo Flemister's out of eligibility. Daniel Carter potentially could come back as a super senior. Rodney Hammond and Derek Davis will have eligibility remaining. Let's say some weird thing happens and all 4 of those guys are gone. Flemister is definitely going to be gone. Let's say Carter decides not to use his extra year. Let's say that Hammond and Davis both have these breakout years and each go for 1,000 yards this season and both leave for the NFL. And you go into 2024 with TJ Harvison, Montravius Lloyd, Jules Goff, and Yasin Willis. It's not ideal. You'd love to have that veteran back, but you could survive like that, and I think you'd have talented players. So I think they've restocked the running back room with these 2 classes, assuming, obviously, that Goff and Willis ultimately sign. That little caveat we have to throw in at all times. But if they do sign, I think they'll have effectively restocked that position and have 4 really good young backs on the roster in 2024. So that's what Willis does for Pitt in the 2024 recruiting class and what he does for the 2024 roster and beyond. That's the kind of player he is. The one last thing I wanted to talk about is Pitt's history with 4-star recruits under Pat Narduzzi. And maybe this, I think we did talk about 4-stars at some point in the past. We ranked the 4-stars or who's the best 4-star prospect that Pitt has signed under Narduzzi or something like that. I think we did things like that. But because Willis is here now or is in the recruiting class now, and they've got 3 other 4-stars in the class with Whittington, Farmer, and Lindsey, I've said before, I think if they can, I believe, let me look at the number real quick. I don't want to misspeak here. The record for the most 4-star prospects signed in a class under Pat Narduzzi was the 2016 class. They signed 5 guys: Damar Hamlin, Amir Watts, Kayzon Pugh, Reuben Flowers, and George Hill. They've never signed more than 3 in any class since then. They had 3 in 2017, 3 in 2020, and 3 in 2021. They've signed 3 over the last 2 classes: Isaiah Neal in this incoming 2023 recruiting class, Ryan Baer and Sam Okunlola in the 2022 class. They are on track, I believe, to break all of those records and sign 6 for the first time ever under Narduzzi. And even if they get to 5, it'll be the first time since 2016. It's a mixed bag when you look at Pitt's 4-star recruits over that period. When I just listed that 2016 class, Damar Hamlin, that's great. Amir Watts, hey, he played quite a bit. Kayzon Pugh, Reuben Flowers, George Hill. George Hill at least was medically disqualified. He didn't flame out on the field. 2017, they signed 3 4-star prospects. Paris Ford, okay, he was an all-ACC guy. Complicated career, but all ACC. AJ Davis, he was good team guy, pretty solid back. Charles Reeves, he disappeared. 2018, they signed 1 4-star prospect, Michael Salahuddin. He made it 1 year at Pitt as a running back, and then he transferred and played DB at like North Carolina A&T or somewhere. 2019, they signed 1 4-star prospect, Davis Bevel, quarterback. He didn't win the Peach Bowl. And then he transferred to Oklahoma. 2020, they signed 3 4-star prospects, and it gets a little more interesting here. Dayon Hayes, going to be a starting defensive end this year. Rashad Battle, going to be in the mix at cornerback, potentially nickel. And Javonte Royal, we'll see if he's able to contribute at wide receiver. 2021, they signed 3 4-star guys. Elliott Donald, still waiting on him. Nakai Johnson should get a great opportunity this year. Naquan Brown barely made it a year. 2022, I mentioned Ryan Baer and Sam Okunlola. I think both of those guys are going to make a big impact this season. 2023, Isaiah Neal, I think has a chance to make a big impact this season if he doesn't, if he doesn't end up redshirting just because there's so many defensive tackles. I think the trend has improved. I think when you look at Neal, Baer, Okunlola, and then potentially Donald and Johnson, that's 5 out of the last 6 guys they've signed. And really, you could go back into the 2020 class with Hayes, Royal, and Battle. So you're looking at the last 1, 2, 3, 4 classes, which is a total of 9 guys. And Naquan Brown is already gone. Javonte Royal, you have some questions about, moving from DB to wide receiver. But 7 out of those 9 look like they're going to be contributors and be really good players. To varying degrees, but really good players. So, and that's better than the, I think 10 guys they signed before that, where you could find Hamlin, Ford, Amir Watts played a lot, like I said. A.J. Davis played a lot. You're looking at, really, how many guys? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 four-star prospects signed in the classes of 2016, 17, 18, and 19. 10, and you stretch to get to even 3 who were really contributors. So I think the trend has improved. Now, we could go really deep on this, and we're probably... I sometimes think that once we cross like the 15 or 18 or 20 minute mark, that I might as well just say a bunch of inconsequential nonsense. If I have good points to make, I shouldn't make them at this point in the video, because I don't think most of you are still listening or watching. But you should at this point, because this is something I think is an interesting conversation for us to have, that I think maybe earlier on they were getting more 4-star guys who were 4-star in the rankings, but had been ranked 4 stars early in their career and didn't get the star ranking adjustment that maybe their high school careers merited, because their college careers didn't end up to be much. I don't want to say they were fraudulent 4 stars, but less convincing 4 stars might be a nice way to put it. But the last 9 now, aside, you're always going to have some guys wash out. Naquan Brown didn't make it. Javonte Royal is a question mark after changing positions. But 7 out of the last 9 from the 2020, 21, 22, and 23 recruiting classes all look really, really promising. And that maybe their 4-star rankings were not fraudulent, that their 4-star rankings really had some juice behind it, some meat. And I think they're going to show it at Pitt. So this is a long way of saying that I think the recruiting has improved overall over the course of, this second half of Pat Narduzzi's first 8 years. And I think some of the way it's improved is that they're getting some 4-star guys who maybe really, really deserve that 4-star ranking and are going to live up to it in college. Because I think Isaiah Neal is going to be a stud. I think Ryan Baer and Sam Okunlola are going to be studs. I think Elliott and Donald and Nakai Johnson here this year, and Dayon Hayes and Rashad Battle are really going to get a chance this season to prove what they can do and show how good they really can be and live up to that 4-star ranking. So, Yasin Willis, Jasir Winnington, Dede Farmer, Cameron Lindsay, I think these are good prospects. Are all of them, solid, strong 4-star recruits? I think so, probably to varying degrees. But I think it's continuing a positive trend for Pitt, and a positive trend in Pitt recruiting. So if you like the commitment of Yasin Willis, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com is going to get real busy here on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We're going to have all kinds of stuff from training camp. We're going to have all kinds of stuff from press conferences and post-practice interviews and pre-practice interviews and player interviews and Morning Pitt episodes and live Panther-Lair shows and all these things that we do here on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You don't want to miss any of it. So make sure you like this video and subscribe. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Subscribe button's right down there. Like button's right down there. Click it and forget it, because you've done your good duty for the day. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. I hope you had a great weekend. This weekend, it was a little hot, a little rainy, but hopefully you enjoyed it. We are now almost into August. We're into training camp. We're into football season. It's here, folks. So settle in, buckle up. It's going to be a fun one. Thanks for tuning in today. I appreciate it. We'll have some more training camp preview coverage tomorrow right here on the Morning Pitt on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com.